The following archives contain accounts of extreme domestic paranoia, child endangerment, medical trauma, and psychological horror. Some of these legends discuss specifically those from global folklore, detailed themes of ancestral grief and the loss of children. These stories are more than simple scares. They're reflections of deep-seated human anxieties. Content is intended for mature audiences, and viewer discretion is strongly advised. If the line between myth and reality begins to blur, please step away. The archive will still be here when you return. Welcome back to High Frights. Last time we've traveled through the lonely highways together. We've navigated through digital landscapes where faceless entities watch from the edges of the screen. But as the night deepens and our focus must shift, the monsters we've discussed so far were easy to spot because they're outsiders. They were the hitchhikers on the side of the road and the glitches in the machines. But what happens when the horror stops being a stranger in the woods and becomes a stranger in your living room? What happens when the thing you fear the most does wear a human face? Tonight, we're moving from away from the outskirts of society and moving more into the heart of society. We're looking at the suburbs, the place where people usually feel the most safe and secure, and therefore they're also the most vulnerable. We're going to examine the legends of the stranger in the house, the ancient terrors that span across oceans and centuries, and finally, the inanimate objects that seem to carry life and a hunger of their very own. You may have noticed that the shadows in your room have grown a little bit longer since the video first started. The air may feel a little stiller, and the weight of the stories we're about to tell may get a little heavy. The archives are open. Now let us begin the horror of the polite strangers. The year is 1974. It's a Tuesday night spiraling It's a Tuesday night in a spiraling two-story house at the end of a cul-de-sac. The parents are out for a dinner party, leaving the three children in the care of a teenage babysitter. The children are asleep upstairs, and the house is silent, saving some room for the ticking of a grandfather clock and the hum of the refrigerator. The babysitter settles onto the couch just to read a book. Then the phone rings. A heavy rotary phone. She answers it, and there's silence on the other end. But then a low, raspy voice. Have you checked on the children? She hangs up, assuming it's a prank. 10 minutes later, it rings again. Have you checked the children? She gets nervous and calls the operator, asking them to trace the call. The operator tells them to keep him on the line next time. Now the phone rings a third time. The voice is angrier now. Why haven't you checked the children? She keeps him talking. Her hands are shaking until the operator breaks in. The operator's voice is now frantic. Get out of the house, the operator screams. We traced the call. It's coming from the upstairs extension. This is the year text of urban legends. It's the inspiration for Black Christmas and When a Stranger Calls. Why does it work though? Because in the subverts it subverts the concept of the fortress. We assume that danger comes from outside trying to break in. The horror of this story is the realization defense that the defenses were bypassed hours ago. The call is coming from inside the house. It transforms the house from a sanctuary to a cage. The stairs, usually a path to the bedrooms, which is a place of rest, now become a path to the threat. Now, sometimes the intruder isn't hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they're hiding in plain sight, relying on our inability to distinguish between the artificial and the real. A teenage girl is babysitting for a wealthy family. The house is massive, filled with expensive art and antiques. The parents give her a tour before they leave. You can watch TV in the den, the father says. Once the kids are asleep, of course. Later that night, the girl settles in the den. In the corner of the room is a life-size statue of a clown. It was incredibly realistic. The makeup, the ruffles, the oversized shoes. Its painted smile seems to stare directly at her. She tried to ignore it, but it made her skin crawl. Every time she looked away, she felt like it had moved somehow. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She called the parents on her cell phone. "I'm so sorry to bother you," she whispered, "but the clown statue in the den is really freaking me out. Is it okay if I cover it with a blanket, at least?" There's a long silence on the other line. "Get the kids," the father says, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. "Get the kids and go to the neighbor's house, now." "Why?" she asks. "We don't own a clown statue." This legend plays on the uncanny valley, the psychological distress that we feel when something looks human, but not quite there yet. But specifically, it creates a horror of camouflage. The killer was in the room the entire time. He was watching her watch TV, and he relied on the social construct, the assumption that a rich family must have an eccentric taste to hide. It forces us to question our surroundings. Is that coat rack in the is that a coat rack in the dark, or is that a person? Is that a pile of laundry, or is someone actually crouched there? The clown statue relies on seeing something you shouldn't, but this next legend relies on not seeing. It relies on the polite instinct to not disturb others. Two college girls shared a dorm room. Now one was more of the introverted type to stay in and study, while the other one likes to party. One Saturday night, the introverted girl stays in to prepare for her midterms, while the other one goes to a frat party not too far away. The partying roommate returns late, around 3 in the morning. She enters the dorm room and it's pitch black. She hears her roommate breathing heavily on the other side of the room. Not wanting to wake her up, she doesn't turn on the lights. She creeps to her bed and changes in the dark and then goes to sleep. The next morning, she wakes up to a beautiful sunlight streaming in. She sits up, rubbing the sleep from her eyes, and looks across the room. But what she sees isn't the normal sight she usually sees. Her roommate is now dead. Her throat has been slit wide open. And written on the wall in blood, right above the dead girl's bed, are the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn the lights on?" The story deals with survivor's guilt and the proximity of death. The horror isn't just the murder, it's the intimacy the survivor unknowingly shared with the killer. The killer was there when she walked in, when she changed clothes, when she fell asleep. He was standing in the dark, watching her, holding the knife. The message on the wall reveals that her survival wasn't skill, it was a whim. If she had flipped that switch, she would also be dead. It makes the simple act of entering a room more terrifying. Most of these stories involve intruders, but sometimes the danger doesn't come from what we invite. It but sometimes the danger comes from when we invite strangers into our lives. Apologies. When we let our guard down in a social setting. A businessman takes a trip to New Orleans. A long week of meetings, he finally goes down to a hotel bar to unwind. A beautiful woman approaches him. She's charming, intelligent, and very interesting. She buys him a drink and they talk for a few hours. The last thing he ends up remembering from that night is a joke that she told. He wakes up in a bathtub. He's groggy and the water's freezing. He looks down and the tub's full of ice. There's a phone on a stool next to the tub and a note taped to the wall. The note reads, "Do not move. Call 911 immediately." He reaches back and feels a sharp pain in his lower back. His fingers touch a fresh, crude incision. He's been surgically opened. His kidneys have been harvested. This is a modern classic, emerging from the 90s, actually. It reflects on a very specific fear of bodily autonomy and the commodification of the human body. In older legends, monsters wanted to eat or kill you. In this legend, you were just parts. You were a resource to be harvested. It speaks to a true vulnerability in the face of seduction. The idea that if something seems too good to be true, it'll probably cost you a piece of yourself, in both a literal and metaphorical sense. Now, fear is not just an American invention, it's a universal language. Every culture on every continent has looked into the dark and seen something staring back. While the customs definitely change, the core fears remain the same. Fear of water, fear of the bad mother, fear of the twisted face. Let us travel now away from the suburbs and to the legends that haunt the rest of the world. For this one, we start off in Japan. It's a foggy evening, and a child is walking home alone from school. Ahead, standing underneath a street lamp, is a woman. She wears a long coat and a surgical mask. Not uncommon in Japan for someone with a cold. As the child passes, the woman steps forward. Due to I'm horrified to disrespect the culture, I will not be attempting to pronounce this in the native language, but I will be saying the translation. She asks, "Am I beautiful?" The kid, seeing her pretty eyes, says, "Yes." The woman reaches up and pulls the mask down. Her mouth is slit from ear to ear, a gaping, bloody maw of teeth and muscle. She screams, "Even like this?" If the child screams and says no, she produces a long pair of rusty scissors and kills them instantly. But if the child says yes, she takes the scissors and slices the child's mouth to match hers, so they can also be beautiful. This legend actually caused some widespread panic in Japan in the late 70s. Police patrols were increased and schools walked children home in groups. It's terrifying because it's a no-win scenario. The logic cannot save you. Kindness cannot save you. It's a confrontation with vanity and rage. The slit-mouthed woman represents the destruction of identity. She forces her deformity onto you. From the streets of Japan, we now move to the riverbanks of Mexico and the American Southwest. Here, the water flows and a woman weeps. Mexico, or Latin America, whatever you choose to call it. Centuries ago, there was a beautiful woman named Maria. In a fit of jealous rage against her unfaithful husband, or perhaps in a moment of despair, she took her two young children down to the river. She held their heads under the water until they stopped moving. When the rage lifted, she realized what she'd done. She was instantly consumed by grief. She died on that very riverbank, but her spirit was denied entry to the afterlife. She was cursed to wander the waterways looking for her lost children. They say that if you're near a river at night, you can hear her, a low wailing cry carried onto the wind. Oh, my children, do not follow the sound. If La Llorona finds you, and you are a child, she will mistake you for her own and drown you. If you're a man, she will see her husband in you and drag you to a watery grave. La Llorona was a boogeyman, used to keep children away from the dangerous waters. But psychologically, she represents the terrifying concept of the failed mother. The mother that's supposed to be the ultimate protector. La Llorona is the inversion of that natural order. A mother who kills. Her grief is persified. Her horror is that the punishment is eternal rep, repetition. She is always searching and always weeping, but she can never undo the act. La Llorona is a ghost, but in the vast ancient landscapes of Australia, the legends get a little more beastly. The Australian bush is a vast, silent, and ancient. In the swamps, billabongs, and creeks, the Aboriginal people tell of the bunyip. Descriptions definitely vary. Some say that it looks like a giant starfish, while others say it has the head of a dog and the tusks of a walrus. But everyone agrees on what the sound is. It waits in the water holes during the day. The water is calm, but at night, a blooming roar echoes across the landscape. It's a predator that targets mainly women and children who wander too close to the water's edge. One settler account in the 1800s describes a man hearing a splash, turning, and seeing a dark, hairy shape dragging his dog silently under the surface. The water settled and the dog never resurfaced. The bunyip represents the fear of the unknown wilderness. Australia is a continent where the environment is often hostile, and the bunyip is the avatar of the hostility. It lurks in the water, the very thing you need to survive. It suggests that in the wild, you're not top of the food chain, you're prey. We end this chapter with a legend that's more modern, but feels ancient. It's been reported globally, from Texas to the UK. It involves the most innocent thing imaginable: children. Now you're at home, it's late, but there's a knock on the door. You open it to find two children standing on your porch, and they look normal for the most part, maybe about 10 or 12 years old at most. They're wearing hoodies and plain clothes, and they look down at their feet. "Can we come in?" one asks. Their voice is flat and monotone. "We want to use your phone, our mother's worried." A wave of irrational primal dread washes over you. Your fight or flight response kicks in instantly, and you feel like you're standing in front of a predator. "No," you say, your hand gripping on the door. "I can make the call for you." "Let us in," the child demands. They look up. Their eyes are solid black. No whites, no irises. Just two voids of oil. "We can't come in unless you invite us," the child says. The voice is now aggressive, commanding. You slam the door and you lock the deadbolt. You peek out the window, but they're gone. The black-eyed children phenomenon is terrifying because it corrupts the innocence. We're biologically hardwired to want to help children, to protect them. But this legend weaponizes our empathy. It uses the form of children to bypass our defenses. The black eyes trigger a biological revulsion. It signals disease or corruption. It is the vampire myth, updated for modern suburbs. We can't come in unless you invite us. They want in. The phone calls, the statues, the children, they all want inside. Now we've discussed the living, the dead, and the monsters. Now we must turn our attention to the things that can't really die because they never were alive. The objects, the cursed items, the things that sit on your shelf and just watch you sleep. Key West, Florida. It's the turn of the 20th century. A young boy named Robert Eugene Otto is given a doll by a servant. The doll is nearly 3 feet tall, stuffed with a wood wool, and dressed in a sailor suit. Gene, as the boy is called, names the doll Robert. Gene becomes obsessed. He takes the doll everywhere. But soon, the parents start hearing two voices come from Gene's room. One is the high-pitched voice of their son, and the other is deep, gravelly rasp. When things go wrong in the house, vases smash, furniture overturned, Gene will point to the doll and say, Robert did it. The neighbors even claim to see the doll moving from the window, while the family's not home. Guests reported seeing the doll's facial expressions change, its painted eyes narrowing into a glare. Gene grew up, but he never got rid of Robert. He built a small room in the attic for the doll, complete with furniture. Now, after Gene died, new owners moved in. Their daughter found Robert in the attic and claimed the doll tried to attack her. Now, today, Robert sits in a glass case at a museum in Key West. There are signs everywhere like, do not take a photo without asking for permission. The walls behind the glass are covered in letters, hundreds of them, from people who disrespected the doll and suffered in car accidents, job losses, or mysterious illnesses afterward. They're writing to beg Robert for forgiveness. Now, keep in mind, the legend of Robert the Doll is based off of a true event. Why are dolls so effective as vessels of horror? It now returns back to the uncanny valley. A doll that is the effigy of a human. It has eyes that don't blink and a mouth that doesn't speak. When we look at a doll, we're looking at a mirror of ourselves that lack soul. The legend of Robert the Doll taps into the fear of transference, the idea that a child's imagination or a servant's malice can breathe life into the lifeless. It suggests that our toys might be observing us, judging us, or waiting for the moment that we turn our backs. Robert is a doll of physical presence, but sometimes the curse isn't a 3D object. Sometimes it's trapped in 2 dimensions, in a face that can't look away. Now we take a trip to England. In the 80s, a strange pattern began to emerge in the news. Firefighters in the UK were reported a bizarre phenomenon. They would be called to a house fire, a total loss. The walls would be charred, the furniture turned to ash. But sitting in the middle of the debris, completely untouched by the flames, would be a mass-produced print of a painting. This painting is known as The Crying Boy. The painting, by an artist named Giovanni Bragolin, depicted a young, tearful orphan. Rumors began to swirl. It was said that the artist had used real street urchin as a model, a boy whose parents had died in a fire. Shortly after the painting was finished, the boy himself had passed away due to an explosion. The curse was born. People began to believe that the painting acted as a beacon for fire, yet remained immune to it. The newspaper, or the newspaper called The Sun, even organized a mass bonfire where readers would send their copies of the painting to be destroyed. They claimed that the flames struggled to catch the paper, even when doused in petrol. The Crying Boy is a fascinating legend because it involves synchronity. Once people heard the story, they looked for evidence. Every time a house with the painting burned, it confirmed the myth. But it touches on a deeper, more ancient fear, the evil eye. The idea that an image can cast a shadow over a household. We hang art to make the home feel lived in, but the legend suggests that bringing an image to suffer into our homes, we're inviting that suffering to manifest in the reality. A painting that captures a stranger. But what happens when you see an image of yourself, not in the mirror, but standing in the room with you? Now, this is global folklore. It's a quiet afternoon in 1845. A classroom of girls in Latvia is watching their teacher, Emily Sage, right on the right on the chalkboard. Suddenly, the girls gasp. Standing next to Emily is, well, Emily. The second Emily mimics every movement of the first. When the real Emily eats, the double eats. When the real Emily sits, the double sits. The double looks exactly like her, down to the stray hairs and the wrinkles in her dress. Though the double never spoke. It had no substance, and when one brave student tried to walk through it, they described the sensation as walking through a thick, cold mist. In folklore, seeing your doppelganger, your double walker, is an ultimate omen. It's said that if you see your double, you will die within that year. It's your soul leaving your body, preparing for the transition, or perhaps a sinister entity from another dimension stepping in to replace you. The doppelganger is the horror of self. We're the only thing in the universe we truly know. If we can't trust our own reflection, our own uniqueness, and the foundation of our own reality, it crumbles. The doppelganger legend plays on the fear of replacement. The idea that there's someone out there who looks exactly like you, sounds like you, but is simply wanting you to stumble so they could take over your life. It's the ultimate identity theft. Now, we've looked at dolls, we've looked at paintings and doubles, we've looked at individual items, but our final story for tonight, we take a look at how we've tried to categorize all this. We look at the most modern way we can handle the impossible. And honestly, also one of my personal favorites. In the deepest corners of the internet, there's a database. This isn't a storybook, but a collection of special containment procedures. It describes a worldwide organization that operates in the shadows, capturing things that defy the laws of physics. Items like SCP-173, a concrete statue that only moves when you blink, or SCP-087, a staircase that goes down forever, inhabiting by a face with no pupils. The SCP mythos is unique because it's told through a language of of bureaucracy. It isn't once upon a time. It's item number, object class. It suggests that the government, or something even more powerful than the government, knows all the legends we've talked about tonight are real, and they're failing to keep them contained. The legend here is that the website itself is a leak. That by reading these files, you're being recruited or marked. It suggests that for every urban legend we know, there are 10,000 more that are kept in the cold steel cells beneath the earth. The SCP Foundation represents the rationalization of horror. We live in an age of information. We want to catalog everything. We want to put a number on the monster. But the horror lies in the containment breach. The idea that no matter how many files we write or how many steel doors we lock, the anomalies, the legends, will always find a way out. It's the acknowledgement that the universe is weirder and more dangerous than science can even explain. We've traveled a great distance tonight, from the backseat of a car on a lonely highway to the glow of a computer screen in a dark room, from spirits of an ancient folklore to the manufactured monsters of the modern age. And you might ask yourself why? Why do we do this? Why do we sit for hours filling our heads with scenarios of our own demise? The skeptics say it's adrenaline, a cheap thrill, but I think it's something else. We tell these stories to practice. We tell them to run simulations in our minds. If the killer is in a back seat, what do I do? If the children with black eyes knock on my door, do I answer? If I hear a voice calling my name from the woods, do I look back? These legends are armor. These are the psychic defenses we build against a chaotic world. By naming the fear, by giving it a shape, whether it's a hook, slit mouth, or a man in a slender suit, we gain a small amount of power over it. We survive the story, and in doing so, we feel like we could survive the night. Now that the story's over, the destruction is now gone. And you're about to turn this off, you're about to return to the silence of your own home, and you can ask yourself one question. While you were listening to me, while you were focusing on the screen, did you hear that floorboard creak behind you? Did you notice that the shadow in the corner moved just an inch closer? I'm sure it's nothing. It's probably just the house settling. Probably. Thank you for joining me tonight on High Frights. Until next time, try to get some sleep. Bye!